Leaving the Saints, the pretty little islands, heading for Martinique, or should I say back to Martinique. Don't think we've been up this early for quite a while. It's 5:30.
No, I look like I am. Then I must be.
Well, you've had your coffee, you look fairly bright.
Oh, it's down there. I haven't finished it.
Well, I'll tell you what does look bright, the instruments. Getting out into the nice Atlantic wind. As forecast, 14 knots. And we're trogging along, leaving the Saints. Through this rather narrow little gap. Doesn't look narrow on the camera, but it's actually quite tricky to show you on the plotter. And the sun is just up. We're back out into the Atlantic. Off the wind. Moving along very nicely. Are we awake yet? Oh yes, you look quite awake. For 6:08 in the morning, I think we're doing pretty well. We're still only seeing 17, 18 knots. We're still doing 8 knots plus. After we clean the impeller, our speed and speed over ground are finally matching properly. So we were doing a nice steady 9 knots across from Saints to Dominica. We got hit by a massive squall, which one I just took the rain on the video coming down, and now it's gone to, well, not nothing, but 8-9 knots as we slowly go past the end of Dominica, looking back into the anchorage there in Prince Rupert Bay where we were. I imagined, as with always down the back of these islands, it's going to be feast or famine with the wind. None of your spray flying across the decks today, just a gentle sail. fall off. You'll get a weedy bottom. Come on. Another one. Lovely day. Should be whales around here somewhere. Hello world. Where are you? One is getting daring. This is the moment before she fell off into the weed and Gled said au revoir from the stern. A nice figurehead. Lovely gentle sail on smooth seas down the back of Dominica. As we reached about 2/3 of the way along Dominica, the wind stopped for like 5 minutes and then actually came in from the west. Must be a sea breeze, which is great. So we're sitting quite nicely at 6.5 knots and 7 knots of wind. Not bad for a 30-ton lump of glass fibre. So we're out in the lee of Dominica, and as usual the Atlantic wind comes in, 21, 22 knots. Quite the contrast to where we were an hour ago, just sauntering along behind Dominica. It'll be like this for 2 hours. We're doing 10 knots, about 60 degrees to the wind. Flying along, a lot of water, fairly deeply reefed main, and at least 3 or 4 rolls in the Genoa. Just got stronger and stronger, and we've got this huge squall line in front of us, black clouds. So we've heavily reefed the main now, and we've come out with a cutter. Hopefully it'll come to nothing, but we're ready for 30 knots if it comes. Still doing 8 knots, even this tiny bit of sail out. We've just popped across the Atlantic and we're now on the North Sea, or at least it feels like it. Just wild, wild weather. It's not actually blowing that much, it's 25 knots, but it feels more like 40. The wind and the rain is just whipping across the deck. Got hardly any sail up and we're cruising along at 8 knots. Just wild and cold. Just wild and cold. Bobby, it's cold. Well, that was quite a wet trip. We're both drowned rats. In fact, the whole boat's a drowned rat. Even with David, it's leaking underneath. In fact, I think the rain was going upwards. So we're trying to decide whether we anchor in Saint Pierre, a rainy bay, or further down in the Grenons, another rainy bay probably. So we're going to go in and have a little look. But welcome back to Europe. Wet, cold, bleh. Not very pretty in here this morning. All our clothes drying after our soaking last night. But the sun is out this morning, kind of. And we are in Saint Pierre. We're not going to go ashore because we're going to pop over to St. Anne. It's quite a small town now, but it used to be the capital until 1902, when 30,000 people were killed by Montpellier eruption. There's Montpellier up there. Every person was wiped out apart from one who was in prison. And out here there's lots of buoys marking shipwrecks from 1902 that were also sunk in the eruption. Heading across the Bay of Fort-de-France. It always seems to be blowing like hell out of this place. Pretty heavily rigged. 25 knots wind. Bashing into wind against tide. Luckily, the tide is actually with us.